Hi everyone, thank you so much for choosing Everbloom for your everlasting wreath this Christmas. To help you get the best results possible, I'm going to be showing you how to design your wreath from start to finish. And today's tutorial is for our festive berry wreath. And this is our kind of classic Christmas design mixed with some wild, whimsical sort of textures, and it's got lots of colour in it as well. It's a very cheerful design, I really like it. Great, so before we start, I'm just going to run through what's in your wreath kit. So we've got our spruce base and a large mixture of foliage and berries, and then you've also got some pine cones and gorgeous sort of real cinnamon and orange in this design as well. So the smell is really lovely in here. And you've also got your ribbon and twine for hanging and your instructions, which will just be running through what I'm going to tell you today. And you'll notice on the back we also mentioned gloves. So if you are feeling like you want some extra safety, particularly if you're working with children, I would recommend wearing some gloves, as there can be a little bit of exposed wire on the sprigs. And then we also mentioned that you may want to use a hot glue gun, and this isn't compulsory. The sprigs do go into the wreath base quite nicely, but if you're looking to display your wreath outside where it's exposed to the elements and you want that bit of extra security, some hot glue does do the job for that. And great, so we're just going to start with our spruce base. Once you've taken it out of the box, it can look a little bit compact. So what I want you to start doing is just gently pulling apart the greenery to just add a little bit of extra volume. And you may notice that you get some gaps in there, but they'll be filled with all of the other greenery that we'll be using today. So I'm just going round and pulling apart all the sprigs, just to add that kind of natural flow. And you can see that already it's almost sort of doubled in size. It's looking a lot better now. Great, so once you've done that, I'm just going to turn over the base just to pay your attention to the wire that we've got. So we have a nice nest of soft wire here, which kind of acts like fresh moss. It's going to work really well to lock in our sprigs. And then we've also got some thicker wire which has been spiraled around the base, and this is really good to work as kind of an anchor when you want to hook your sprigs underneath the base. You just want to pay attention to that thick wire there. Great, so now your base is ready. I'm going to start by adding some pine. We've got various different pine sprigs here, just to add sort of different kinds of textures and add some extra interest. And I'm going to start with the cypress spray. So this has been chopped up into different sized sprigs, and I'm just going to start by adding them all evenly across the base. And as it's the first sprig that I'm adding, I'm just going to show you exactly how to insert every stem sort of into your base. It's kind of the same process all the way through. So what I want you to do is pull apart the spruce just gently to expose the base so that you can see this kind of wire netting and the thicker wire that's been spiraled around the base itself. So what you need to do is find where the thick wire is sitting and insert your stem beneath the thick wire, and then you'll notice that it's kind of inserted itself into the nest of the base itself. And then once it's been inserted, give it a little tug just to make sure it's in there properly, and then pop your spruce back over and just repeat that process for the rest of your cypress spray that you've got. I'm just spinning it round because you want to make sure that the direction of your greenery is all going in the same way that your base has already been. So you can see that the spruce is all kind of pointing in the same direction. So I'm just going to follow that pattern and just find those areas where you've got that thick wire. I've next got a more classic pine. It's even got some small pine cones in there, and it's got really beautiful colour. And this pine we're just going to do the same thing as we did with the cypress, and just filling in gaps where you see just spruce. So we want to make sure that there's kind of an even dispersion of different foliage all across the wreath. So I'm just finding the areas where we don't have any cypress to fill with this pine. We've then got two other types of pine sprigs. We have this sort of spiky one, which is a really great filler just to add some additional volume beneath the spruce. So if you notice areas where there's any gaps, this is a really great sprig to use. It's got almost like a rough stem, which is great for just inserting directly into the nest of the base, and it just sort of anchors itself, so you don't need to worry too much about it falling out. And just add it in different directions in various different places across the wreath where you notice that it could do with some extra volume. And then the final pine that we're using are these needles, and they've actually also got some pine cones on the end there. And these we're going to add all across the wreath, but they actually come in different sizes. So the slightly bigger ones, I want to pay attention to the outside of the wreath because they create a really nice sort of silhouette across the outside. So you can see here that once it's attached, it's sort of poking out in a really lovely way. And then the smaller ones, I want to pay attention closer to the inside of the wreath. So in a similar way, it just breaks up that spruce silhouette from the inside and the outside and creates just some more interest. So I'm just going to add them all in various different places. And you want them to be spread out quite naturally just to make the most of them. So the next foliage I'm going to be adding is eucalyptus. We've got some gorgeous willow eucalyptus here. It's nice and delicate and it comes in different sizes. So again, with the larger ones, I would focus around the outside of the wreath, and then the smaller ones actually work really well just on the top of the wreath to break up the kind of more typical festive foliage that we've got already on the wreath base, and just disperse it around nice and evenly. And we've got a nice thin sprig here, which is really easy to just insert into your wreath base, not worrying too much about it locking in. And with the eucalyptus, you also want to make sure that you bend them just slightly so that they've got a real natural shape to them. You don't really want any straight lines in your wreath. It wants to be nice and curved to create that circular shape. I've got a nice big bit here, so I'm just focusing on the outside. So that just kind of pokes out in a really lovely way. Just bending that there. Perfect. And really similarly, we've got a different type of eucalyptus here, some blue gum eucalyptus. And with this one, I would focus mostly on the outside. Again, it's got a really great shape that just adds some interest to the circumference. And you've got a nice stem there just to hook into your wreath base. I would use the thick wire for this one as it's a little bit heavier. And just make sure that you bend it like with the willow, so that you've got that natural shape. And don't be afraid to really curl them. They add some real interest to the wreath here. And I'm actually going to add one to the middle as well, just to add some extra interest to the center. And it's just curling round like that. Got one more. And if you put one in and then you decide you sort of change your mind and it needs to go somewhere else, simply just unattach it gently and change the placement until you're happy with it. Okay. The next foliage we're using, we've got just this really gorgeous leaf spray, which again adds just a bit more interest, breaks up the spruce, and I'm just going to add that in various places where I see some gaps, where there's sort of, it's lacking in interest. These leaves, I'm just going to add slightly leaning inwards, and I'm just going to pick it up and show you what it looks like at the moment. So you already noticed that we've added a lot of volume And there's lots of different shapes going on and tones. Okay, next we're going to be adding our dried products, which you'll find in your kit. So we've got some pine cones, some cinnamon sticks, and also some dried oranges. And the pine cones and cinnamon are both already added, already attached with wire, which means that it's super simple to attach them onto your wreath. And what we're going to do is use the wire to also attach our oranges, just to skip a step, I suppose. So I'm going to add the pine cones first, and what we want to do is take a couple of your oranges and actually just feed the wire through the orange there. So you've got a nice little bundle, and you can use 2 or 3 oranges that just peek over the pine cone, and then once you've added it to the wreath, you've got both sort of attached together. And so what you need to do to attach the pine cones and the cinnamon, you just need to pierce the wreath base with the wire, and you need to just be careful with this one because once you've pierced it, the wire is obviously going to come out the other side, and you don't want to hurt yourself with the wire. But just pierce the base with the wire, and then you can see that already you've got your pine cone attached with the oranges. And then on the other side, just turn it around to show you, you just want to insert it back into the base so that it's not exposing at all, and then it sort of just disappeared like that. And then you just have your pine cone nice and attached with those oranges peeking out. So just to show you with the cinnamon, I'm going to do the same. So pierce the orange, and I'll do 3 on this one. 3 oranges, so they just fan out like that. You can separate them, and then I'm going to add the wire to the wreath base to attach the cinnamon stick. And then on the other side, I'll show you again, you just want to reinsert the wire so that it's not peeking out of the back. Great, so I'm just going to repeat that for all of the cinnamon and the pine cones, and you could even combine them. You could say do a cinnamon stick and a pine cone together and just make them so they're positioned in the same place. I might actually add a pine cone to this area here because I see a nice gap. So this is really where you can kind of just embrace your creativity, not worry too much about where it goes, and just see what looks right. And also if you add one in, you can always just take the wire out from the back and start again. Great, so now our dried products are on the wreath. It's now time to add our berries. So we have 2 gorgeous red berry sprigs in the kit. We have our rose hips and our bird berries, and we're just going to dot them all around really sort of evenly across the wreath, and both have like a nice stem to attach, and we can play around with adding some along the outside and also concentrating on the inside of the wreath as well. So I'm just going to start with the rose hips, and these do have a slightly longer stem, so I think it's nice to have them almost sitting along the outside for a few of the sprigs, and just making sure that you're really heroing the berry itself, because the stem can sort of be covered by the spruce. I'm just going to lift it up here so I can find a nice bit of wire to attach it to. And so you can see then it's just sort of falling along the outside. I'm going to do the same over here. Just exposing that base so that you can really hook it in. And then you can also manipulate the stem so it actually bends inwards, and you can get the most of the berry details. This is a slightly shorter one, so I'm going to add this closer inwards on the wreath and just delicately expose the base by lifting up the greenery. Obviously, where you've got the dried products now, there's slightly less room on the wreath, so you just want to concentrate on those areas where you've got some space. Now that the rose hips are all added, I'm going to add the redbird berries. So these are slightly smaller, so you can kind of mix them in amongst the greenery a little bit more simply. And I want these to just kind of cluster in amongst the pine cones and the cinnamon sticks. And they've got a really lovely edge to them that just add a bit more of a wild look. Right, so all of the berries have been added now, and I'm just going to have a little step back and a look at where everything's positioned, because we're coming close to the end of our design, and I just want to make sure that I'm happy with where everything's sitting. For instance, this one here, I'm not too happy with. I want it to be more embedded in amongst the wreath, so I've just taken it out and I'm just going to lift the wreath up and just add it in a place where the stem is more hidden. So that's kind of the beauty of these wreaths, is you really can just play around with them until you're happy with the design. So we're almost done. The last things that we're going to be adding is our twigs. So I wait till the end just because I want them to sit sort of on top of the wreath design and not get hidden too much. So we've got two types of twigs here. We've got sort of a wispy one and one that's in bud as well, which just adds a little bit more colour and texture to the wreath. And what you want to do is just sort of pull them apart and focus the larger ones on the outside of the wreath, so they're sort of poking out, and then the shorter ones can be embedded a bit like the berries. So I'm just going to start with this shorter one and find a place where I've got a bit of room. I'm running out of space on the wreath now. You can see that it's filled with so many different elements. So I just want to find any gaps that you can see and just add them so they're just poking out the greenery. And then this larger one, I'm just going to find an area on the outside where there's sort of a gap. I can see one here. I can see that there's nothing really poking out of this area, so I'm just going to use this twig. And the best way to get something along the outside is just to lift up your wreath to expose that base underneath, and then you can find one of those thicker wires. Great, so that's just poking out there, and just bend it so it's in the shape that you want it to be. Got the same with this sprig. I'm going to find another area. There we go. And then we've got our skinnier twigs here, and these look really nice, just kind of inserted into the base at the top, and they just bring the whole thing up a little bit more and add that extra wispy texture to it. Right. So now everything's been added, once again, take a look at your wreath from a distance, maybe pop it on the floor just to get a bird's eye view, and make sure that you're happy with the way it looks, the way all of the elements are kind of interacting with each other, whether you need to bend any of the stems to add a bit more of a natural look. And yeah, just make sure you're happy with it, spend some time, enjoy it. And then once you're happy with it, we're just going to now focus on hanging your wreath. So let me just show you my finished result. And when you're hanging your wreath, the first thing to do is to decide where you want the top of your wreath to be. And this is where we're going to add our ribbon and twine. So I think I want it to look like this when it's hung, just because I like the way that it's all sort of, all the directions are going this way. Yeah, so I've picked this area, and so you want to take your ribbon and twine, and the reason you have both is because the twine you can use if you want to have the ribbon on the outside as more of a decorative piece, but if you want to use the ribbon just for hanging, the twine you can use for something else. but today I'm going to show you how to use your twine to make your hook, and then the ribbon will be placed on the outside. So once we turn it over, I'm just going to show you how to add your twine to the base. So take your twine and you just want to wrap the string around the base and get behind the greenery that's on the front so that you've got a nice clean hanging point. And just take your time with this, be quite gentle so you don't want to ruin any of your design at the front. So I've just wrapped the twine around my base. Once you've done that, just do a double knot so you've attached it properly. And then you've just got plenty of string there to act as a hook to wherever you want to display it. So if you're putting it on your door, maybe you attach the string to the knocker, or if you've got a wreath hanging hook on the inside, for inside you can just tie this to wherever you're hanging it to and it'll hold really nicely. And just to show you the front, there you go. And now I'll just show you how to attach your ribbon. So I'm just going to place the wreath back down. So now you've got your twine on the back, you can focus your ribbon for just creating a nice decorative piece to add to your wreath. And for this one, I'm going to attach it to the top, and it's just going to hang really nicely over the top of the wreath. It's deliberately quite skinny just so that it doesn't sort of move the attention too far away from all the beautiful decorative elements of your wreath itself. So what I'm going to do, a bit like with the twine, I want to attach the ribbon around the base, but this time focusing in on the front. So this is a little bit fiddly here. You have to sort of feed your ribbon around the back of all the greenery so that it's just sitting behind on top of your base. And then you just want to tie it like with the twine so you've got it attached to your base. And now you're free to either just leave it as a knot and leave it hanging naturally like that, or I'm just going to tie a small bow. So it's just a really simple ribbon, just as a small little accent. Okay, and then I'm just exposing the velvet for that final finished look. Great, so I've just attached my ribbon, and you can see here it's just hanging naturally over the top, and you might need to just chop the ends so they've got even on each side. And that's the wreath, that's it finished. I'm just going to hold it up to show you. So we've got lots of different elements here, lots of colours, tons of texture, and it's just a nice classic festive design for Christmas. And yes, so I can't wait to see all of your designs. I hope you enjoyed making yours today. Don't forget to tag us on Instagram so we can see what you created. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out via our website. And yeah, thanks so much for joining, and Merry Christmas.